19. The age everyone calls the absolute prime of life. College dorms, first loves, big, beautiful dreams. But me? My entire net worth was the shredded clothes on my back, a bony frame, and a deep, sunburned tan. The permanent receipt of a life spent drifting under the blistering heat. People always said I was a golden boy. Pretty face, right? But what good are looks when you're sleeping on concrete? It doesn't fix anything. It just brings trouble. No family, no roots. The only place I ever called home was this sketchy, run-down shelter on the edge of the city. And then, 17 happened. That one night completely wrecked whatever innocence I had left. Him, the guy we were forced to call foster father, the boss of that orphanage. That night, he dragged me into the back storeroom to count inventory. The heavy wooden door slammed shut. Lock. The lights cut out. Rough, calloused hands, reeking of cheap liquor, suddenly clamped down on my shoulders. I thrashed. I cried. I begged him to stop. But a starved kid doesn't stand a chance against a grown man. Everything was shattered. Right there on those dirty, ragged sacks. The physical ache was nothing compared to the absolute, suffocating humiliation. But the worst part? The terrifying truth that messed with my head. Somewhere, deep down, inside the panic, there was this confusing, visceral spark. A sudden warmth from the human touch. It was my first time. It was forced. It was wrong. But God, why did a part of me feel a twisted sense of pleasure? Was I gay? The questions kept screaming in my head, tearing my teenage mind apart. That very night, I ran. I chose the freezing streets over that living hell. For 2 years now, my crew has been the street corners and underpasses. Have you ever felt a true, bitter winter? The kind of cold that eats right through cheap fabric, creeps into your bones, and literally freezes the blood in your veins. Some nights, holding my knees in a pitch-black alley, the loneliness was just heavy. I'd look through the windows of houses with the lights on, see families laughing over a warm dinner, and it would completely break me. I wanted that. So bad. I wished I had a roof. I wished someone would just hold me. I wanted a hot meal to stop the violent gnawing in my stomach. I'd drift off to sleep in the freezing dark, just wondering if I'd even wake up tomorrow. That night, it was so cold my bones felt like they were splintering into 1,000 pieces. A 19-year-old's fever, paired with a hollow, growling stomach, was slowly draining the very last drop of life from my fragile chest. I lay motionless under the awning of a long-abandoned grocery store. My eyelids were heavy, closing down. In my delirium, I didn't even feel the cold anymore. They say, when your body starts to feel warm in the dead of winter, death is knocking at the door. I smiled, a bitter, hollow smile. It's finally over. Your miserable life ends right here, Lorye. Suddenly, a sharp sound shattered the darkness. Someone had just rushed under this very awning to escape the rain. The sound of a jacket being shaken out, the heavy sigh of relief from a stranded traveller. But I had no strength left to open my eyes, nor did I care who it was. I just lay there, like a breathless corpse. A few seconds of absolute silence passed. Then, his footsteps abruptly stopped. He had noticed me.
Hey, excuse me? Are you okay?
A hand gently but firmly shook my bony shoulder. I remained frozen. At that moment, my breath was so faint that even I couldn't hear it. He panicked. His palm pressed quickly against my forehead, then slid down to my neck, searching for a pulse.
Good God, you're burning up. Hey, wake up. Don't close your eyes.
With agonizing effort, I fluttered my eyelashes open. There, beneath the streetlights blurred by the pouring rain, was the face of a man. He wasn't rich. He didn't wear an elegant trench coat. He was just wearing a faded windbreaker, his sharp jawline beaded with raindrops. But his eyes, those eyes held a raw, genuine panic and worry that pierced right through my chest. He hurriedly unzipped his waterproof backpack, pulling out a small bottle of water. He gently lifted my head, cradling it on his lap.
Come on, try to take a sip. Slowly, slowly.
The cool, clean water soaked my cracked lips, trickling down my burning throat. It felt like holy water reviving a dying, withered tree. I choked and coughed violently. He gently patted my back and then, without a single second of hesitation, he stripped off his oversized windbreaker, still radiating the residual warmth of his own body, and draped it over me. Oh my God, it was so warm. His jacket felt like a protective cocoon, sealing me away from the deathly chill of the world. I greedily curled into it, inhaling his warm, masculine scent mixed with the smell of rain from his skin. How long had it been since anyone touched me with such gentleness? Ever since that horrific night at the orphanage, every touch meant humiliation. But his touch, it was so clean, so sacred, it made me want to cry. He sat right down on the freezing concrete beside me, pulling me close to his body to block the wind. We began to talk, or rather, he asked, and I answered in ragged, broken whispers. I told him I was 19, homeless, no family, no food. I hid the scars of my abuse, but just by looking at my emaciated body and terrified eyes, he seemed to understand everything. I saw his eyes grow red. He stared out into the curtain of rain, silent for a long time, and sighed. A sigh heavy with his own unspoken burdens.
I'm not rich either.
He smiled faintly, a smile tinged with a deep loneliness.
I just moved to this city to work as a mechanic. I barely make enough to get by, living in a tiny rented room. I'm all alone, been alone for so long that sometimes I'm terrified of that empty place.
He turned to look straight into my eyes, his gaze as warm as a fire crackling in the winter night.
If you don't mind, come live with me. We'll share whatever food we have. At least, you'll have a roof over your head. You won't have to sleep on the streets anymore. What do you say?
Live together? A home? My ears rang at his words. I stared at the stranger who had just given me his warmth, who had just saved my life. My withered heart suddenly began to thud violently. An overwhelming ecstasy, a surge of warmth rushed through my body, completely washing away the fever that tortured me. This was it. The prayer from my lonely winter nights finally answered. This man, he was just as lonely as I was, and two broken souls seemed to have found each other in the middle of a raging storm. I nodded, tears streaming down, soaking the shoulder of his shirt. I knew, from this exact moment, my life would never be the same again. Our 1-year anniversary. Honestly, it felt less like a date on a calendar and more like a core memory being engraved directly onto my soul. Outside, the city was drowning in a relentless pouring rain, blurring the world into streaks of cold neon lights. But inside this room, the cold couldn't touch us. The air was thick with the soothing, heavy scent of lavender essential oil, the exact scent he always lights whenever he senses I've had a rough day. The amber nightlight cast a lazy, golden glow across his sharp, ridiculously handsome jawline. I just stood there, staring at him, my heart doing this crazy, stuttering flip, because my brain still couldn't process that this man was actually mine. He moved toward me, slow, deliberate, like he was afraid of spooking me. Then, those strong, tattooed arms wrapped around me from behind, pulling me flush against his chest. He completely engulfed my body, a body that, thanks to him making sure I actually ate this past year, finally had some healthy weight to it, softer and more alive than ever. I leaned back against his chest, solid as a brick wall, feeling the steady, heavy thud of his heart. Thump, 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 giving me this insane sense of security. His warm breath, smelling faintly of pine and mint, brushed against the sensitive skin of my neck. A violent shiver shot straight down my spine. I trembled, but it wasn't the old, ugly fear from my past. No, it was just pure, unadulterated happiness overloading my system. "You're so beautiful," he muttered against my skin, his voice dropping into this gravelly, breathless register that made my knees go weak. His words felt like an absolute spell, pinning me to the spot. And then came his lips. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't some aggressive, dominant move. It was so impossibly tender, it made me want to cry. He pressed his lips to mine, tasting me slowly, before dragging the kiss downward. He trailed his lips along my jaw, lingering at my pulse point, and then sank down to my collarbone, pressing a kiss right into the hollow of it, knowing exactly how it made me. My breathing hitched, stuttering in my throat. I turned around in his arms, facing him. The moment our bare skin met, this shot of blinding, volcanic heat surged straight through my veins. Every single trauma, every phantom pain from my past, it was just wiped clean, erased by the sheer reverence in his touch. When the space between us completely vanished, when we finally became one, I swear I felt my soul leave the ground. He tangled his long, warm fingers deep into my hair, gently tilting my head back, forcing me to look him straight in the eye. God, in those deep, ocean eyes, I saw my own reflection. I saw his entire universe, and that universe, beautifully enough, had only me in it. We clung to each other, losing ourselves in the rhythm of us, our breathless, honey-sweet whimpers melting into the quiet night. My sun-kissed skin pressed tight against his broad chest, taking in every urgent beat, every breathless, passionate friction that was so intense, yet so fiercely protective. That night, I broke. The tears just spilled over, my shoulders shaking. He panicked, softly kissing the tears away from my cheeks, but he didn't know I wasn't hurting. I was crying because for the first time in my damn life, I was loved. I was being held like the most precious thing in the world. I was so freaking happy. Part 4. The Abyss of Destiny and the Devil's Bargain. That summer, the air was so thick you could practically chew it. It was hot enough to drive a sane person crazy. The bedroom, which had been my absolute sanctuary of peace for the past year, felt like a claustrophobic cage tonight. Vu wasn't home. He had taken a last-minute, late-night delivery run for an interprovincial truck route. I lay there, alone on the mattress, watching the ceiling fan spin its lazy, exhausting circles, my chest tightening with this irrational, sickening anxiety. The intuition of someone who has survived too many wreckage-filled years is a curse. It smells disaster before it even hits. Tonight, my lungs felt like they were collapsing under a phantom weight. The screen flared to life. An unknown number. I bolted upright, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard it felt like it was trying to break through the bone. My fingers were shaking, trembling so badly I could barely swipe the screen. Lifting that piece of plastic felt like hoisting 1,000 tons of pure dread. Hello? My voice was barely a whisper, catching in my throat. Is this the family of patient Tran Vu? This is Cho Ray Hospital calling. Mr. Vu has just been admitted to the emergency room in critical condition. A catastrophic traffic accident on the highway. We need family members here immediately to sign the surgical consent forms. Boom! It felt like a bomb detonated inside my skull, even though there wasn't a single drop of rain or a flash of lightning outside. My ears went completely dead, ringing with a high-pitched, deafening static. Every sound in the room, the fan, the cicadas, the distant city traffic, was violently sucked into an invisible black hole. Accident. Critical. Family. The words shattered in my mind like shards of glass, piercing my eardrums, stabbing directly into my brain. No. No, no, no. This is a mistake. I just held him yesterday. He just kissed my forehead, reminding me to eat, telling me he'd be right back. He promised me. He promised we'd go to the beach this summer, that we were finally building a real life together. The floor beneath my feet disintegrated, dropping me straight into a bottomless abyss. I lunged out of the house, into the suffocating night like a maniac. I ran like a dying animal through the oppressive, humid midnight. Sweat poured down my skin, mixing with hot, stinging tears that blurred my vision. The summer night was boiling, but my hands were ice cold, shaking beyond my control. I had no money. I checked my jacket pockets, nothing but a few crumpled bills left over from the afternoon market. No motorbike, no car. Nothing. I stood by the curb, frantically waving my arms, begging the passing headlights to stop. But everyone was in a rush. No one cared about a disheveled, hysterical kid screaming on the side of the road. Ultimately, I used the last ounce of my raw, desperate strength to just run on foot. God, please, no, please don't take him from me. I screamed internally, my fingers clawing at my own chest because the pain was physically crushing me. Fear, a massive, pitch-black monster, was crawling up from the soles of my feet, wrapping its heavy hands around my throat, cutting off my air. I was terrified. I was absolutely paralyzed with terror. He wasn't just my boyfriend. He was my only living family in this cruel, God-forsaken world. Before Vu, I was a ghost. A hollowed-out shell of a kid that the world had chewed up and spit out on the pavement. He was the only one who picked me up out of the mud, washed away the blood from my old wounds, and showed me what a home felt like. He taught me what it meant to be held like something precious, like a treasure. If he dies, where do I go? How do I even breathe tomorrow? Please, please God, take me instead. Take my life, just don't touch him. My useless prayers dissolved into the humid air, swallowed whole by the deafening roar of the city. The irony of my existence was sickening. I was standing at the gates of my lover's death with completely empty hands. No wealth, no power, no family to call for a loan. Just a tiny, fragile speck of dust being obliterated by the wheels of fate. That kind of helplessness, it's worse than dying. Lorye Hospital at midnight is a literal house of horrors. Heavy gurneys rattling down the halls, families howling in grief over fresh corpses, the nauseating smell of blood mixed with industrial disinfectant. I slammed my hands onto the reception desk, dripping with sweat, eyes bloodshot, my voice fracturing. Where is Tran Vu? The accident. Where is he? OR3, second floor. Go straight, turn left. You better brace yourself and get the deposit money ready, kid. It's bad. The nurse's voice was detached, a cold blade driving straight into the back of my neck. I bolted up the stairs, my knees buckling twice because my body was entirely hollowed out. When I reached operating room 3, the red warning light was glowing brightly, the universal sign of a life hanging by a single, fraying thread. I pressed my face against the glass pane, desperately searching for a miracle. But all I saw were blue surgical gowns crowded around a body covered in deep crimson stains. It was him, the man who held me every night, the man with the sun in his smile, now lying motionless beneath an army of wires, tubes, and cold, whirring machines. I collapsed onto the freezing linoleum floor, about to let out a sob, when my entire body locked up. Every muscle in my frame froze. A wave of ice-cold dread rushed up my spine, paralyzing my brain. Blood turned to absolute slush in my veins. Just a few meters away, standing in a dim, shadowed corner of the hallway, a man was arguing with two traffic police officers. That heavy, bloated build, those thick, brutish shoulders, that balding head, and that gravelly, disgusting, low voice. No, 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 no. It can't be. My memory, the horrific, violent memory I had buried in the deepest, darkest furnace of my personal hell for over a decade, suddenly ripped its way out, screaming. My head throbbed with a blinding pain as flashes of my 19-year-old self came roaring back. The dark room, the smell of cheap liquor, the bruises, the absolute, soul-crushing humiliation of being violated, stripped of my innocence. All of it hit me like a tidal wave. It was him. The monster himself. The man who had abused me, tortured me, and reduced my childhood and youth into a pile of smoking ash. The man I had to run away from in the dead of night, leaving my entire life behind just to find a breath of survival. Why is he here? Why tonight? I looked down at the accident report file held by the officer. A Mercedes luxury sedan with a custom plate. It was his car. It hit me like a physical blow. The drunk driver who had crossed the line. The one who had ploughed head-on into Vu's bike tonight. The one who had pushed the only person I loved to the brink of death was him. The police left to process the paperwork, leaving the corridor completely empty. Just me and him. The silence was so loud, I could hear the air conditioner buzzing on the ceiling. He turned his head. Our eyes locked. 1 second. 2 seconds. We both knew. You don't forget the face of the monster who ruined you. And he certainly hadn't forgotten the prey that had slipped through his fingers all those years ago. But here, in a public hospital, he just let out a sickening, slow smirk, his eyes narrowing like an old fox. We pretended to be strangers, not a single word of greeting exchanged, but a current of raw hatred, humiliation, and disgust exploded between us, incinerating the air. I clenched my fists so hard, my fingernails tore into my palms, drawing blood. The physical pain was nothing compared to the toxic humiliation coursing through my veins. I wanted to leap at his throat. I wanted to rip him apart with my bare teeth. I wanted to scream to the world that he was a rapist, a murderer. But I couldn't. I looked back at the operating room. Julian needed money. Right then, the surgeon stepped out, his face drawn and grim. Who is the family of Julian? The internal bleeding is catastrophic. We need to perform an emergency craniotomy to stop the hemorrhage and repair the skull fractures. The initial out-of-pocket deposit is $50,000. You need to pay it right now so we can proceed. If you delay, we cannot guarantee his survival. $50,000. That number might as well have been a star in the sky. Where was I supposed to get that kind of cash in an hour without health insurance? I dropped to my knees, grabbing the doctor's coat, sobbing uncontrollably. "Doctor, please, just save him first. I'll find a way to borrow it. I'll sell my kidney. I'll do anything. Please don't stop the surgery." Hospital regulations are strict, kid. We need the funds to secure the equipment and blood units. Hurry up, his time is running out. You have maybe an hour left, max. The doctor shook his head with pity, turned around, and walked back inside. I sat flat on the floor, my brain spinning, completely destroyed. I looked over at him. He was standing there, casually lighting a cigarette right next to the no smoking sign, watching me like a hunter amused by a wounded animal thrashing in the mud. He walked over, step by step, the click of his leather shoes sounding like the footsteps of the grim reaper. He bent down, leaning close to my ear. The expensive cologne mixed with the stale reek of alcohol, and his foul breath hit my face, making me want to vomit. "Well, look at you, you miserable little thing." His voice was a gravelly, demonic whisper. Fate has a twisted sense of humor, doesn't it? Ran from me for years, just to crawl right back to my feet. The cops are investigating, but I have money. I have lawyers. I can drag this case out for years without losing a single hair on my head. That hospital bill? I'm not paying a single cent. I'll just deny liability. Say your little boyfriend swerved into my lane. I raised my bloodshot, hatred-filled eyes to glare at him. "You cruel piece of shit! You did this to him. You are going to hell." He didn't even get angry. Instead, he let out a loud, deeply satisfied laugh. "Hell? Ha! In this world, money is the law. Money is life. Your boyfriend is dying right now. His heart rate is dropping to 0. Right now, I am the only one who can save him. I can sign a check for the full amount right this second. Hire the best neurosurgeon in the country, under one condition." My breath hitched. My lungs collapsed. "What condition?" The words bled out of me, dripping with ultimate humiliation. He smiled, a repulsive, predatory grin, and stretched out a rough, calloused hand to drag a finger down my cheek. I flinched away in absolute disgust, but his next words nailed me straight into the floorboards of hell. "Come back to my house. Obey me. Be my good little pet again, just like you were before you decided to pack your bags and run. You signed the agreement to return to me, and tomorrow your boyfriend gets a private VIP suite and his life back. So, his life for your freedom. Choose. One condition. The contract with the devil lay open on the floor. I was standing entirely alone at the crossroads of hell, and every path was lined with jagged, poison-tipped spikes. My head was on the verge of exploding. My chest was so tight, it felt like my ribs were snapping inward. If I choose freedom, I get to keep the life of a normal human being. A life I had to buy with my own blood, sweat, and tears. But the cost? He wins. The man who gave me love, the man who held me during the coldest rains, the man who was my entire universe, will die. He will become a cold, lifeless corpse on a white hospital bed, and his blood will be on my hands. I'll be free, but my soul will die with him. I will spend the rest of my miserable life being chewed alive by guilt, regret, and agonizing remorse. How could I ever taste freedom, knowing it was bought with his life? But if I choose him, I have to willingly hand over this body and soul to the monster who butchered me before. I have to go back to that house of horrors, endure those disgusting touches, the beatings, the daily systematic degradation. I have to give up my right to be human. My dreams, my future, everything we just started to build will be incinerated. The tenderness, the respect, those sweet kisses on my collarbone. All of it will be replaced by the brutal, violent hands of my enemy. I would save his flesh, but I would become a walking corpse, permanent, forever incapable of smiling again. Why? Why me? What did I ever do to deserve this? The scream inside my head was deafening, clawing at my sanity. I looked through the glass pane of OR3. On the cardiac monitor, his heartline was flattening. The thrum of the machine was growing sparse, like a candle flickering out in a violent wind. A memory of our 1-year anniversary flashed before my eyes. His deep, warm voice whispering, "You're so beautiful." His strong arms engulfing me, his eyes holding my entire world. Vu, what do I do? Please tell me what to do. The tears finally broke, boiling hot, scalding my skin, but inside, my spirit was turning to ice, stained pitch black. This torment, it was more sadistic than any punishment on earth. I looked at my bloody palms, looked at his triumphant, disgusting smirk, and then looked at Vu's dying frame. Time was up. Every tick of the clock was the grim reaper, dragging him one step further away from me. I couldn't lose him. I could not let him die. If this world demands someone go to hell, then let it be me. He deserves to live. He deserves to see the sun, to have a future, even if that future doesn't have me in it. I closed my eyes, swallowing every ounce of my remaining pride, dignity, and self-worth. When I opened them, the tears were gone. There was nothing left but a cold, dead, terrifying hollow. I turned my head and looked straight into the grotesque face of my tormentor. I could smell the stench of his cheap victory. I forced the words out, my voice trembling but hard as stone, my fingernails cutting so deep into my palms that fresh blood dripped onto the hospital floor. Fine. I agree. Sign the check, and I'll go with you. I made my choice. I turned the key to my own damnation, stepping right back into the fire, just to buy one more breath for the only person who ever loved me. Hit follow and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter of this journey. What lies ahead for our protagonist when forced to choose between the survival of love and the price of freedom? Will justice finally prevail, or will the darkness win? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this twist. Drop a comment below and let's talk. As an author from Vietnam, Lorye is always here, listening and reading every single one of your words. Stay tuned.